Well, Derek and I, we have been friends for over 20 years. I can't remember when we first met, but it was in the mid-90s. And we were both students at Canadian Bible College. I think I might have been an upperclassman because I'm a little bit older than you.
Yep. I even went to school with your dad.
Maybe you're older than me. My dad kind of continued going to school for the rest of his life. And I think he would still be going if the college hadn't moved. But so Derek and I've known him for almost half my life, which is pretty incredible in terms of that. And I love Derek because whenever I'm with him, the conversations we have are just inspiring to me. And they're profound, and they always get me thinking. And he was here last week with his wife Cora, and they were doing media around the city, and I was chauffeuring. And we went to Denny's afterwards, and just sitting there in Denny's and talking about life, about faith, about friendship, relationships, all that stuff. I just wished all of you could be there with us in Denny's. I'm sure Denny's wished it too, because it was kind of a slow morning. But, I just thought, how can we bring this sort of thing to all of you on Sunday morning and maybe share some of what's on Derek's heart? If you were with us last night, you saw this incredible new show that he has called The Gift. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but first I want to talk with Derek about who he is. So, Derek, I think it's safe to say that you are the only graduate of Canadian Bible College who is also a magician.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think that's your claim to fame there, right?
There you go.
How do you go from being a student of theology to being this award-winning, world-traveling, international phenomenon called Derek Sellinger, the magician? And I know we don't like that word around here, but I'm going to use that because that's what it is.
Yep.
How do you go from this to this? Because it seems like it doesn't almost seem compatible.
Right. Well, I mean, the word magician in our culture, is not a connotation of a religious practice. It's a description of a particular art, the art that defies perception and uses illusion to create moments of wonder. So I think we generally understand that in our culture. It's not the magician that's talked about in the New Testament. That the magician that was kind of forbade in the New Testament was a sorcerer. And it's really, that's a religious practice where those people were attempting to control the cosmos for their own ends. And obviously, followers of Christ know that is not a good idea. So this is about a description for a particular type of art. And how did I get here? Well, Canadian Bible College has as much to blame as anything. Some of you think that's hilarious. It was always a hobby of mine to perform magic tricks. When I was young, I learned some tricks and seemed to impress my family, so I kept learning more. And then I was a shy kid, so it was a way to break the ice with girls, and start the conversation there, and kind of got me out of my shell. And when I went to Bible college to study theology, it was just a hobby. It was something I did for fun. And as I kind of continued through my process there, and it got to the end of my degree, I determined that my calling was not to be a professional minister. So what am I going to do? And I got a job as the Dean of Men at Canadian Bible College. And so for 5 years, I ran the residence program at Canadian Bible College. Well, during that process, I performed card tricks for guys when they first would come into their dorm rooms. Like, hey, I'm Derek, I'm the dean, but here, let me show you something. And I kind of would break the ice with these guys, and we'd create relationship and become friends. On top of that, the theater over at the old building there was available to me to rehearse in. So I'd start working on some things. A Vegas headliner took me under his wing, and I started to work on my art, and under his tutelage, and because of the access to that facility and the opportunity afforded me in this city, I won some very nice awards, and that kind of launched me in a direction where, I woke up one day and I just had this realization that maybe I could do this, and I felt God's blessing on it, and I took the leap, and I'm so glad I did.
So would you say you feel called to do this?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a calling on your life. Now, some would describe you as an entertainer. You would describe yourself as a storyteller.
For sure.
Explain that.
Well, I hope I'm entertaining, but my art form is very interesting. There's kind of an inherent storyline built into the art of magic and illusion, and that storyline is wonder. This idea of experiencing something that is impossible, and that kind of awakening of the childlike state, When you're a child, just seeing anything is amazing. Like, whoa, car, right? There's this story my grandma used to tell about me walking with her, and I'd be like, bird. And my wife will attest, I still walk and go, bird. But it's that wonder that like nature itself is just exuding this wonder. Well, as we get older, we start shutting that down because we've seen it, we've experienced it. And we're like, oh yeah, that's just a bird, no big deal. I see birds all the time. Well, what magic and illusion does is it reawakens us to that experience of something new and fresh and like amazing. So there's that inherent storyline throughout. But I really wanted to take the art a step further, and throughout all of the pieces I perform, there is great intention to what I'm trying to communicate and say, and all of these things are leading somewhere. And last night's show had a story arc that took you through, hopefully, an emotional journey, even though it may not have been really kind of, like when you go to a play, it's really linear narrative that you really understand. This is a little more subconscious, and it takes you through this subtle narrative, and hopefully in your emotions.
Well, you certainly engaged my emotions last night. I'll talk to you guys about that in a minute. But
cool.
Let's talk about this new show. This is a departure from you.
Yep.
From what you've done before. All your shows have been fantastic. I've seen them all, and some of them a couple of times.
Yep.
But this one, you're saying this is the best I've ever done.
It is. Yep.
And you've taken 14 months to write it.
Yep.
And you've got a different slant to it.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more.
Well, the show is called The Gift, and so technically speaking, I'm not hiding behind. Sometimes in my art, you bring out a piece that is really simple to do, and you kind of hide behind it for a bit, because you just need to have something that is going to work.
And you had one that didn't quite work last
night.
Yeah,
I made a little mistake. Well, that happens. And the ironic thing is I've done that thing like a million times, never made a mistake, but whatever. Apparently,
it's only the debut.
It's only the debut. I'm human. I didn't mess up the one that counted, though.
That's true. We'll talk about that one.
Yeah, so this show, there's no piece that I'm hiding behind. It's all very technical. It's like pure skill stuff, right? And for that reason, it's a thrill. It's a show that I believe that people really won't see anywhere else. So on a kind of a technical level, it's a departure that way. But on a thematic level, I really wanted to tell a story through this show. And the story of the idea of gift. On the surface, the gift, you would look at first blush, well, I'm talking about the gift I have to perform and entertain. And that is a good cursory look. But as you go deeper into the theme, and even at the end of the show, I talk about the gift I'm speaking about is far deeper. And I'm speaking about the gift of life itself. The fact that being alive is an incredible gift that we have. And we take it for granted. We really do. We get caught up in the mundane. We take relationships for granted. We take important decisions for granted. We take so many things for granted as we make things that don't matter more important than they should be. And that continues for me as a Christian. The end of that conversation, at the end of the show, and it is my hope that if you brought a friend, or if you're someone new here that came to the show and wanted to hear what I have to tick, what makes me tick, that conversation for me continues beyond just life as a gift. I believe that there is a next gift, because I don't think life ends at the curtain call of this existence. And I believe that, as C.S. Lewis wrote, that what we are writing now is the cover and title page. And what is to come is a book that goes on forever, and every page is better than the one before. And that next life happens, that is possible as we know God. That life can't happen unless we know God. That it is in his presence that life can continue. And then, of course, the gift I am referring to subtly in my show is the gift of Jesus Christ, who was sent to this earth to die for us so that we might have relationship with God. And why does Jesus have to die? And this is a question in secular pluralist society we struggle with. And perhaps you may look in your own life and say, I'm a pretty good person. Jesus doesn't need to die for me. I mean, I'm a pretty good dude, Well, the fact is that our world, and you just need to turn on the news for 5 minutes, and you'll realize our world is incredibly fallen. This is a very, very troubled world. And if we're really honest, we're very troubled. And we're not okay. We're not okay on our own. And we need that gift. Yeah. We need that relationship.
That's right. So you're using your art to reveal a deeper truth.
Yeah.
A deeper truth about God.
And that's what I believe art should do. Art is representational, right? When you look at a painting of Monet's water lilies, right? That's not the actual water lilies, right? It's a representation of water lilies using ink stretched over paper, right? Or paint stretched over canvas. And Monet is so brilliant that when you look at that painting, you are transported to a moment of perspective that Monet had of that moment. And that's what art should do, is transport you to a moment. And that's what I attempt to do in my art, is transport people to this moment of impossibility, but also these deeper ideas that are running through my mind.
Yeah, I mean, Scripture talks about how the heavens declare, right? We sang about that. The heavens declare God's glory, and Romans talks about how God reveals himself through all of creation, including through us, right?
Absolutely.
And Genesis talks about how we are created in the image of God. And so by natural, we are creators because we're created by a creating God.
Yeah.
But we're also revealers of God through our art even.
Yes, and through our work.
Yeah, through our work, yeah.
You might repair refrigerators. That's an art. It is. If you indwell that work, if you allow God to be present with you, you are being an artist in that moment.
That's an amazing truth. Hear that one for sure. No matter what you do, you are revealing the image of God.
Absolutely.
In all that you do, no matter what it is. So let's drill down into a few of the acts that you did.
Sure.
Ones that stood out to me as we watched the show. And I know not everybody was there. I'll talk a little bit about, or Derek will describe a little bit about it. And then let's talk about the meaning, the theme behind it. What does it reveal about God in this act, this art that we're doing? So one of the ones, and this one may make people a little antsy at times, because, Derek said, he called me and he goes, Kirk, in the new show I want to do this one, but it might not fly very well in your church.
Yeah.
Derek bent a spoon, okay? And I'm not talking he went like this, he just put it in his hand and it bent, okay? A lot of illusionists, magicians, whatever we want to call them, would say this is showing the power that they have within them, right,
Sure.
to do this. That's not what you're saying.
No.
Through this whole thing.
Yeah, there's a couple things around that piece that are important. Let me speak first to the community of faith, the church. All art is performed by methods and means that are common to man. I have no clue how Monet was able to stretch that paint over canvas to look like water lilies. Not a clue. It's unbelievable to me that he was able to accomplish that. But the methods he used are common to man, even though the result and the experience of it is something otherly.
I don't know how to change oil in a car.
Yeah, it's true.
To me, it seems like Pastor Peter is doing magic when he changes the oil in a car.
Exactly. Now, what I'm doing through that performance, first, is a reminder to the community of faith to think. We so often get fearful in culture because we attach causality where it is not, particularly as it deals with art. And the reason why we need to be very present to art is because I believe that is the best way to communicate with folks, especially in our very pluralist culture. We need to be able to communicate through parable and metaphor. And if we are always afraid, we're going to just run away from conversations, right? So that's the first idea. Now, the second idea, as it runs through my show, is, first of all, one of the origins of this trick, the spoon bending trick, was this guy named Uri Geller. And he did it like in the 70s and 80s, and he'd go on Johnny Carson, and he was claiming this psychic ability that I have to bend spoons. And if you ever want to watch some interesting old footage, Johnny Carson, who was also a magician, actually, really took the mickey out of that guy. Like he kind of tuned him in. Because as we learn about discernment, what we need to do is test the spirits, right? And test the spirit behind art. That's an important process. And in a sense, Johnny Carson debunked this illusion and the claim that it is more than it was. Johnny Carson was able to prove on his television show, this is an illusion. Like, come on, Uri Geller, take it down a notch. You're not that important. Now, at the same time, the fact that you can't explain it is a good thing. It means that you're able to experience the moment. Now, as I said in my show, you could go on YouTube or buy the books that I bought to learn it and learn the methods that I did to understand how I perform that or any number of pieces in my show. But that won't detract from the moment that we experience together. And now that's important as an artist because, as Kierkegaard once said, the important things of life can't be stated like mathematical principles, but they must be whispered to woo men's souls. Now, when we apply that to the concept of the gospel, how important is that? So often, I think, we state the gospel like math, right? This plus this equals this. And that makes sense to those who believe. But I think to those who don't believe, it's weird.
Yeah.
Because this is heart stuff. And it's about where they are living in their life. And we don't live in mathematical kind of concepts. We live in the moment, in this kind of visceral experiential moment. And so that piece reminds us to be in the moment and to explain things artfully. And there are people that absolutely have very mathematical minds and they need to understand things different. But I'm kind of cultural in general, I think, needs parable. I think that's why Jesus used parable.
Well, and Paul talks about this, right? How the wisdom that we have seems like foolishness to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And in your show, you do these bits called Magic with Mom. And so he does his act, and his mom's actually here today. She wants us to stand her up? No, I'm just kidding.
She's hiding right now.
She's hiding right now. She's like this. And Mom's here. Mom and Dad are here all the way from Red Deer and for the opening last night. But you do these bits, Magic with Mom, where you do your act before Mom, and she's being videotaped, and her reactions are just priceless.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where she's just like, she's like banging her head going, Derek, Derek, Derek.
That's like my whole childhood right there.
And then you say, it's bothering you that you can't figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And that moment is all about faith.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because how much does it bother us that we can't figure everything out about faith?
Yeah.
When something awful goes wrong in the world and it's like, why did that happen? Why would God allow that to happen?
You're hitting on a big time theme here because it's about faith and it's about trust, right? If you didn't trust me on some level, like my audience didn't trust me, they would have left, right? And that would make sense, right? No, my mom, when she watched me do that, even though she didn't understand how I'm making this spoon bend, she knows me, she trusts me, so she's like able to be in the moment with me, and even though she can't explain it, she's able to go, look, I don't know how you're doing this, but I trust you. I know you love Jesus. You're not evil. And I could be present in this moment. Now, that's an interesting metaphor for us when we encounter things in our faith journey with our moments with God that we don't understand. because those moments most certainly will come. And they may be intellectual moments like, what is the Trinity? I don't get that. I don't get the virgin birth. I'm having difficulty understanding that. Or this event happened in my life and I don't understand that. Well, we may not understand how something happens, but if we trust the character of God, then it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because we know that he is participating with us in that moment. Right. And that illusion actually is a reference to that idea.
Yeah, Hebrews 11 talks a lot about faith, right? Saying that is by faith we understand that the entire universe was formed by God.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just look at it from a logical thinking, reason it all out, you're going to come up with other ideas. But by faith we understand God in a whole different way.
Yeah.
And it is this trust thing, right?
Absolutely.
And willing to stay in the room with God, even in the midst of hardships and struggle, just as your audience was willing to stay in the room with you, even when you're doing weird things with spoons.
I got to put that on a T-shirt.
I do weird things with spoons.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I don't think it'll work. Oh, this is unscripted. Anyways, near the end of the show, so let's keep moving on. There's 2 more acts I want to talk about here, and we'll keep ourselves on time. Near the end of the show, there is an act that, quite frankly, I never want to see it again.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, and I told you that last night. Yep. It's called The Gallows, and it had me on the edge of my seat. In fact, my wife had to talk me down last night because as I was sitting there, I'm just like, this is too intense, and I'm like this, and she goes, he'll be okay. He really will be okay.
Yeah.
And but it's called The Gallows. You explain it because I don't want to relive the night.
Okay. Yeah, so we have 5 gallows up on stage, little hangman's nooses, and somebody comes on stage and writes down a number, and then another person chooses a random number out of a bag. And the person with the random number goes and secures one of the trapdoors so it won't open, but we don't know what it is. Then after that's all done and they're off stage, this person reveals the number that they wrote down and we don't know. And I stand on the gallows trapdoor that they wrote down and put a noose around my neck, and the other 4 have dummies, and with much theatrical buildup, the switch is thrown and the trapdoors drop, and hopefully choice and chance intersect in this moment where it's going to be an interesting night. It's an intense piece, and I wrote it to be intense. I needed this moment of, magic and illusion is quite often happy-clappy. Oh, yay, that's great. But I wanted to create this moment of theater where people come into this moment of crisis with me, where choice and chance are intersecting on a theatrical moment, and where they are identifying with me as the character on stage. And as the character on stage, you were concerned for your friend, but you also mentioned that Wayne Burnett-Cabbage was also just really uneasy with this moment, and you should be uneasy. You honestly should. If you don't, how cold are you, man? I'm risking my life for you. But you should be uneasy with it because it's this very real, dangerous moment. Now, clearly I have safety protocols. I'm not going to die on stage. It's not the way I'm going out.
And you know what? His wife throws the switch.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so how many wives would like to do this trick right there? Britton, don't put your hand up, okay?
I want the audience to be uncomfortable with the moment. And that's for a few different reasons. One is, on a very kind of cursory level, there are choices people are making in this world that they need to stop making because they're creating this nexus moment where they are risking other people's lives. Example, drinking and driving. Why are we still having an issue with drinking and driving in our culture? Why? I don't get it. And we need to make choices that don't risk other people's lives. This needs to stop. And there's hundreds of choices like this. People are making choices in business that are literally risking other people's livelihoods. This stuff has to stop. And so from an artistic perspective, I want to bring the audience to this moment of uncomfortability where maybe they will think about their choices when they're making them. But there's a further thought to it. And when you kind of, drill down into what I believe in my faith, there's this idea that all of us are doomed to the gallows, that death is certainly coming to us all, and that we all, as human beings, desire to escape death. That is a very good desire. And if you look at that idea played out through culture, you see beauty culture working on it, you see movies trying to talk about it. It's, we're all trying to find this fountain of youth where we can escape death. Well, the Christian message is the idea that the only way to escape death is to unite ourselves with the choice that God himself made to take our place on the gallows. Yeah. That he literally took the fall for all of the evil ever done on this earth, and he stands in our place. Yeah. And because of him standing in our place, we don't even need to get up there. Now, how cool is that? Yeah. And then for the community of faith, there is yet another message, and that is the idea that grace is not cheap, that there was a great sacrifice for us to be spiritually connected to God, and that the deeper and abundant life, which we're going to talk about in a moment, the deeper and abundant life came with a cost. And that deeper and abundant life, if we are united to the relationship with God, it may actually cost us our lives and our livelihoods. It may cost us things that are very dear to us, but when we put it in the context of relationship with the God of the universe, losing even our life, which is happening at this very moment all across this earth, people that believe in Christ are being killed right now. They are being martyred at this moment just because they believe. And it may cost you that, but it's worth it.
Yeah. As an audience member watching this, we talked about it for months. Every time we talked on the phone, you told me about this.
Yeah, I'm doing the gallows.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. He warned me about it, and yet I'm sitting right at the back there, and I'm on the edge of my seat, and I wanted to shout out, no. And I wasn't trying to be funny.
No.
I was very concerned about my friend, and as a Christ follower, I had this moment, I think as Christ followers, when we experience an emotional high or an emotional low, when there's angst and when there's euphoria, that we need to pay attention to those moments, because in those moments, God has something to speak to us about. And so I don't ever want to see this act again, okay? But I believe that God has something to speak to me about it, about him and our relationship through this moment. And it kept me up last night, I'll tell you. These bags under my eyes are not. Because as I'm sitting there, my friend has a noose around his neck. And the switch is about to be thrown. And then I think about my friends who don't know Christ. And what does that mean for that is literally a picture of my friends who don't know Christ. Or my friends that are walking away from Christ. My friends, I'm willing to take a chance that maybe they'll find Christ somewhere, or maybe I need to live in a way that is much more missional and engaging with that. And
Compassion.
Compassion,
And I think that, there's a perception by our culture, and it's not wrong, because we've been really bad. We just have been really bad at bearing witness to the light of the world. And I think there's a perception that many people think that we're somehow trying to, conquer the world, that we're trying to gain spiritual success for ourselves, that somehow this pays off for us. And really, if we could somehow communicate when we are bearing witness to Christ, that we're not doing this to gain anything for ourselves, but it's because we really do love you, that we care, maybe that's going to melt some of the edges around defensiveness when people want to have conversations about deep and spiritual ideas.
Now, I think someone who wasn't you, an illusionist or a magician that wasn't you, would probably have ended with the gallows.
Yep.
Because there is a tension point, there is a climax that is reached,
Yep.
and you always want to leave them wanting more, right?
Sure.
But you don't. You have another act after this. And so there's this moment of death,
Yep.
but then there is this moment of this final act that is all about life.
Yep.
And I want to talk about that for a few minutes here, because this final act, for those that you weren't there, it's my favorite act that Derek does. And he's done it, I think, in every show that I've seen you do it in. When I think of Derek and I come up with a picture of Derek in my mind, it's him doing this act. Okay, so let me describe this act, and then you can tell him what it actually is. But it is Derek standing up there with a deck of cards, and he is going like this, and a card will disappear, and then he does it again, and he does it again, and then he brings them back, and there is no end of the cards. And then suddenly he's fanning them, and he's doing all sorts of things. He's making them fly all over the place. And there's an abundance of cards. There's only 52 cards in a deck, right? 52?
Yep, 52.
Okay.
Yep.
Sunday
play a
morning
lot of
math and me
euchre.
aren't good, it's, and yet it seems like hundreds of cards come flying out of your hands.
Yep.
And it's just an amazing thing. And the joy and delight as Derek is doing this act, as he's doing, you always, when we were at Ambrose, you were always walking around with a deck of cards.
Yep.
And so these things, he's doing this thing with this deck of cards that he loves to do. I mean, you talk about how he used to do it as a kid and play underneath the table and stuff like that. And there's such joy on his face as he's doing this final act and this abundance of cards.
Yeah.
Why, and I know that this is your favorite thing as well,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Why do you not end at the gallows? And why do you always do this final act?
Yep. Well, the gallows for me, and I really do experience this on stage. It is an acquainting with the death of Christ and resurrection, and a practice I do every night when I go to sleep is before I go to sleep I pray, Lord, I commit my body to you, and I die to this day to resurrect with you in heaven or tomorrow. And it's a prayer I do every day. And I do that on stage, very viscerally. And, when I come out of the moment of the gallows and I'm here and I'm alive, I want to demonstrate the joy of being alive and the idea of abundance and abundant life. That so often I think that when we're trying, how do I say this? The church has been somewhat pigeonholed in North America as being the moral police. That what we're trying to do is change the moral temperature of culture. That is not our job. If we got everybody to behave exactly how we think they should, and they don't know Jesus, what have we done? We've created a whole big of religion. The point is knowing Jesus, if we believe he's real. I actually think that people they really struggle with Christ for 3 reasons. The first is pride, believing that I'm okay, I don't need anybody. And these people, I'm okay, I don't need anybody. These people are tough to talk to about faith. And I would say if you know this person, just be with them, because life's going to come along. And when it does, be there. Be there to be Christ to them. Or the people are like, I'm no good, and God can't possibly love me, right? That's a type of pride as well. And for those people, be there and love them. The second group of people, so that's pride. The second group of people is fear. And this is very real, that I think there's a lot of people that struggle with this idea of knowing Christ because they have loved ones that have died, that didn't know Christ. And so in admitting this gospel to be true, there's this worry that they're somehow admitting that their loved one has no hope for their eternal future. This is tough.
Yeah.
And I would say that to them. One is to reassure them that we are certainly not the judge. We don't know where they were at, but they would, if they knew the truth of Christ, they would not want them to miss out on relationship and abundant life. Mm-hmm. And then the last one is negative association. And this is people having connection to the community of faith that has treated them poorly. If you're here today for maybe one of the first times, and you're kind of just checking this out, and you're willing to engage the idea of faith in Jesus and all these things, and you have had an experience with the church that has hurt you, I want to say to you, we are sorry. Mm-hmm. We are so deeply, deeply sorry. We are hypocrites. We are. And we don't want to be, but we are struggling to believe. We're struggling to know. We're on a journey, and we make big time mistakes on this journey. Mm-hmm. And the good news is, because we are not perfect, you are most welcome. Because you're welcome to come and journey and struggle and make mistakes with us. And to discover this abundant life, as messy as it is, with us. So we're sorry, and we hope that you will forgive us for any harm we have caused you. But we also hope you will not reject the living Christ because of our poor witness at times. And with some of the really difficult ones, like residential schools, like think about that for a second. Mm-hmm. These people deeply harmed by people who said they serve the same Christ we serve. Mm-hmm. Again, we got to be present and serve those people. Mm-hmm. Serve them and show them that this is different. Mm-hmm. That those people that harm them actually have no idea who Jesus is. Mm-hmm. That the Jesus we serve laid down his life, and that's what we will literally do for you. Mm-hmm. And we want nothing from you. You owe us nothing, and we just want to love you.
We talk about grace and truth around here.
Yeah.
And John writes that Jesus came full of grace and truth. And we strive to be like that. And when we are more grace, then we let anything go.
Yeah.
When we're more truth, then we're harsh people. Yeah. And yet Jesus was both grace and truth, and somewhere in the middle there, somewhere as grace and truth are in balance, that we discover this abundant life, and we represent it to everyone else.
Yep.
Jesus said that he came to give us life abundant, right?
Yep.
He said, I've come that they might have life and they might have it to the fullest.
Yep.
Right before that verse, he says, there are people out there, thieves, he calls them, who want to come and they want to steal life from you.
Yep.
They want to steal the abundance. And you've mentioned some of the things that get stolen from us, right? Our innocence in the residential schools.
Yep.
And just awful things that happen.
Yep.
There's thieves that come that want to steal life, but Jesus came to give life, to breathe life into you.
Yep.
And this is the incredible thing that we are to be about as a church, right?
Yep.
Is to be people of grace and truth and help people experience this abundant life.
Absolutely. And I think for the North American church particularly, the virtue of simplicity is extremely important. Really, that last illusion I performed, it's like out of nothing, all these cards keep appearing. And it really is a metaphor for that. Empty your hands, be present with God. I have a mentor who once said to me when I was early in my career and I was struggling getting this act together, he said, if you're not enjoying practice, it's because you have too much stuff. Edit your act and make it simpler so you can enjoy it. That's a great message for life.
So if you're not enjoying the Christian life,
what are you complicating your life with?
There's a thought to think about, hey?
How can you just be simply present with Jesus and the Holy Spirit? How could you be there? And then let him add stuff onto your life. So often we're the Martha, right? We got all this obligation because we're trying to still prove things to us. Here's the newsflash. There's nothing you can do to get God to love you more. God loves you completely right now in this moment. The moment that you allow him to pick you up out of the darkness of not knowing him and place you on his lap. In that moment, you were as close to God as you ever will be for all eternity. In that moment, there's nothing you could do, nothing you can do to get more of God's love. And the Christian faith and the practices of faith and the disciplines of faith aren't about getting God to love you more. They're about changing your perspective. Because what happens is, as you read the scriptures, as you pray, as you participate in community, your perspective begins to change. You begin to shift. And over time, I believe you begin to get a glimpse of this God who is holding you. And I really believe that guys like C.S. Lewis and some of the pillars of the faith, that when they were at the end of their life, they were seeing God much better than I'm seeing God right now. And that's where I want to get. That's why I do these things. This is why I pray. This is why I go to church, is because I want to shift my perspective. The art of magic and illusion is all about perspective, about challenging our perceptions and our perspective. The disciplines of faith are all about shifting our perspective and challenging the way we see the world. I want to see God, and I want to see the world through God.
Yeah, Acts 17, Paul, the Apostle Paul writes, God did this. He revealed himself so that we would seek him and perhaps reach out to him and find him. I mean, that's what it's all about. One last question. I mean, we could probably go on for a few hours, but you got to drive to go, and they're probably getting hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Keep the crew happy.
that's right. When someone walks away from your show, or someone walks away from today hearing the themes that you've been talking about from your art, what's the one thing that you want them to do? What is the application point?
I think what my art does better than any other art, really, is it, through both wonder and uncomfortability, through shiftings of perspectives, it literally turns the soil over in your heart. And it creates softer soil for good seeds. So, what do I want? I want people to connect to other people. I want the people in my show to connect to people of faith in relationship. And that's what I pray. That people coming to my show might have hearts ready for the seeds of good news. And that can only happen through community. If I had this big altar call thing at the end of my show, and I decidedly don't do that. If I did that and I had a big demonstration, but these people don't have connection points and relationships, well, one of two things will happen. One is they may dismiss everything I said because now they think I'm just trying to proselytize them. And two, they have no way of continuing the conversation. So what I want people to do is to engage art, to have hearts ready for seeds of gospel, for those seeds to get planted and to grow. And realizing that it takes time. My good friend Ryan, who was here last night, he's a Regina guy. I got to know him as he worked backstage at my show. Years later, he moved to BC. Years after that, he called me one day. I was in Calgary. He said, Derek, I know you believe something. I need to hear about it. He was ready. And he came to Calgary, and he said, I'm in a really tough spot. My wife's got colon cancer. We just found out. What do you believe? And so I told him, the gospel, the best I could. And you know what he said to me? I'm in. What do I do next?
Wow.
That tree, that seed had been growing for a long time. And that was God growing it, not me. I just got to be present for this process. And thanks be to God. And he's both him and his wife, his first wife passed away, but he actually put her on the phone and said, can you tell Melissa what you told me? And so I told her over the phone, and she said to me, I'm in. Wow. What do I do next?
Awesome.
And it's amazing.
So we're going to sing a song, but afterwards, Derek's saying, go have lunch together. Go eat, go share a conversation. Talk about what God is doing in your life. Maybe there was something last night that you saw that caused an angst in you. Talk about that. Experience something of the kingdom of heaven together. Maybe there's something you heard me and Derek talking about. Maybe you didn't agree with something. Maybe you did agree with something. Talk about it. And let the seeds of faith grow in your heart and grow closer to Christ. Let's sing one more song together.